Hi, this is Preetha and welcome to Dakshin Curry. Today we are going to be making a sweet preparation. You must be wondering what. Today I will be showing you how to make Rava Kesari. So to know more, stay tuned. Rava Kesari is the South Indian version of the noble Sheera. Why is it called Rava Kesari? Rava obviously because of the ingredient Sooji Rava which is used, and Kesari actually because of the kesar color. So let us not waste any time and let's have a look at the ingredients. What I am going to be using is Rava, Sooji Rava, around 1 cup of Sooji Rava. Now I have bought this from the market and I have got it roasted, but I am still going to roast it again. Along with that, I will be using 1.5 cups of sugar, 1.5 cups of water which is required for cooking. It's always better to measure water when you're making recipes like this. Along with that, we are going to be using half a cup of milk, some nuts. I'm going to be using cashews and raisins. Ghee is required to roast the Rava, so I'll be using around 2 tablespoons for that. And the flavoring is going to come from elaichi, that is cardamom. So I'll be using some cardamom pods and some cloves, around 2 to 3. And in this recipe, I'm not using saffron, I'm going to be using the kesari color. So I've got some color here. And this last ingredient is camphor. Now we are going to be using edible camphor, which is also called as pachakalpuram. So let's not waste any time, let's see how it is prepared. So I'm going to be using around 2 tablespoons of ghee in this. And once it's hot, I'll be adding the rava and roasting it. Now like I told you, in the market you get 2 varieties of Sooji Rava, roasted and non-roasted. So I've already got the roasted Rava, but still I'm roasting it so that it absorbs the flavors well and also gets a light color, even though we'll be adding the kesari color. Now the idea is not to brown it a lot, just to give it very light color. So you must remember that this is also aiding in the process of cooking of the Rava. Now what many people do is, to ensure that the cooking process is faster, they grind the sugar and keep it. So you can use caster sugar also, but I am using granulated sugar. Now Rava Kesari can be presented in many ways, it can also be molded, so you can really be creative with your presentation. As you can see, the color is changing a bit, it's getting into a little pale brown. And it's giving a very nice aroma also. And at that point of time, I'm going to switch off flame and I'm going to transfer this onto a bowl. Now as you can see, the rava is roasted well, it's got a nice pinkish brown color to it. So the next step would be to boil the water and cook the rava. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to add 1.5 cups of water, say half a cup of milk, and I'm going to allow this to come to a boil. And once this comes to a boil, so we're going to just cover this and allow it to come to a boil. And once this heats up a little, we'll be adding the rava and cooking it. Now ensure that many people, what they do is, they like to dissolve the sugar in the milk and then add the rava. But I totally believe that the rava will not cook once you've added the sugar. So it's always better to cook your rava halfway through and then add in the sugar. So as you can see, the milk and the water mixture has started to simmer. And at this point of time, I'm going to be adding the rava. Now remember that you need to keep on stirring, otherwise this will form lumps and then you're going to have grains of rava which are clinging onto each other and they are not cooked. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the heat, dunk in all the rava, and this is going to bubble away. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a lid and I'm going to allow this to cook for a while. And in the meanwhile, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dissolve some color, very little actually, in water. And I'm going to add that also to the rava. Now many people don't like using edible colors. I mean, this is edible natural color, so it's safe. If you don't want to use this, there's a small tip that you can do. You can use beetroot puree. It will give color, but definitely it's not going to give this type of color. But yeah, it can add color to your. Now, as you can see, the rava is almost cooked. It's absorbed. At this point of time, I'm going to add the sugar. And I'm going to mix this. You will see that this is very dry. In this heat, the sugar is going to melt actually. You don't want a very soggy Rava Kesari. Now, when you are giving this a mix, at the same time, ensure that you are mixing well, that there are no lumps. What you can also do is, if you are not comfortable using this spoon, you can use a whisk. Anything that avoids lumps. Now at this point of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this color. And we have to keep on stirring this. Now there's also ghee which is going to go in this mixture. So now what we can do is we can increase the flame a bit, and once this is evenly mixed, add around a tablespoon of ghee. You must have seen that I have not added a lot of ghee while roasting the rava. That's because it was required at this process. Now this mixture is supposed to cook in the ghee. I am keeping some ghee to cook the cashews. So I'm not using everything. As you can see, this हम लोग कहते हैं ना भुना. We are sauteing this, and when the ghee will start leaving the sides of the pan completely, that is when your sheera is cooked. Now at this point of time, if you want, you can cover and cook also, not a problem. But what I am going to do is, before doing that, I am going to be adding a little bit of elaichi. You can add just about this and cover and cook it for a while. It's time to see whether our rava is cooked. Oh yes, it has. It's an amazing aroma of the roasted rava, and as you can see, it's not sticking. All the sugar has been absorbed. You cannot see ghee soaking onto the sides. Now this means that our sheera is ready. Now there's one small thing that we need to do before we are going to take it off the flame, and that is add this particular ingredient. Now this is called pacha kalpuram. Now this is edible camphor, which gives a very unique aroma, and it's got medicinal properties also, and you need to use very little of it, not much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch off the flame, and I'm going to take very little of this and just crumble this, and you need to use very less. And remember that this should be added only at the end. If you're going to add it at the start of the process of cooking the sheera, it's going to give you a bitter flavor. So what you need to do is you need to switch off the flame, and only after that you should add the pacha kalpuram. Now that this is mixed, I think we should finish the recipe. I think it's time to garnish the recipe by adding our nuts and raisins. For that, I'm just going to add the remaining ghee and heat it up. And what I'll be doing is I'm going to add cloves. Now this is optional, but I like the flavor of cloves. It's just that I don't like a very strong flavor, which is why I did not add it at the start. I'm adding it at the end. So I'm going to add that, and along with that I will be adding the cashews and the raisins. We'll just wait till this heats up, and the minute you can smell the aroma of cloves, at that time should add the raisins and allow them to cook. And just when they are going to swell up, we'll add the cashews. You can add other dried fruits also. You can add almonds also in this. You can add dried figs. Now, as you can see, the raisins are puffed up. So we are going to remove them quickly and allow the cashews to cook. And even that's not going to take a lot of time. You can even remove the cloves. As you can see, the cashews are also starting to brown. So at this point of time, I'm just going to switch off the flame. Okay, now you can see that this is brown. So I am going to remove this also. And what am I going to do to the ghee? I will be adding this to our sheera. Now this is the ghee which was cooked along with the cloves. So I'll be adding that. And I'll mix it up. And at the same time, we will add the nuts also. And now this is ready. Let's serve it onto a plate. As you can see, our Rava Kesari is ready. The aroma of camphor is just brilliant. You do have to try it to believe it. I'm sure you're going to make this and I'm waiting for your feedback. Do not forget to subscribe to India Food Network, and until next time, it's Preetha signing off. Ciao.